Welcome back, Red Spotter, nurturing the Red Spotlight podcast. I'm your host today, Alexis J. Soto, joined by Mr. Peter Martinez on episode 276. This is, I believe, the first podcast that we're recording in November. I know it's like the 9th or the 10th or whatever, but as we forewarned on previous installments, we might have gotten a little lax, and we were most likely going to be a little lax with the first week of November because
blame Florida.
That's when the election fell here in the United States. And if you are an American, or if you've just been, or if you're a citizen of the world, you know that America has had to wait days on end for a confirmation to the election. So I do apologize for not having a show on Sundays as we usually do. But don't worry, we have our content coming up with The Good Place and Guillermo del Toro month all planned for you. Peter and I are very excited to do that. But we thought that for today, because it is such a, seismic event that will have ramifications for every living individual for the rest of their lives, as presidential elections usually do, and considering how much airtime we've already forced the topic on most of the year, it seemed fitting, at least from our perspectives, that we take this episode to kind of decompress, take a kind of a sigh of relief in some ways, and take a breath and kind of catch up on a week that felt like an eternity. As you know, and as you may be aware, all of the major news networks have already called and declared that Joseph R. Biden is the president-elect of the United States. He will be the 46th president that will be inaugurated on the 20th of January in 2021. As Wolf Blitzer said, denying President Trump a second term. That happened. That actually happened.
That was a thing that went down. I was there.
Oh my God. So just be aware that, at least as the conversation progresses, Peter and I are going to, go back and forth on our nights as the event went on, from the original election night all the way up until election night 5. The news media certainly got to milk it for an entire week, and holy crap, did they ever. But it seemed as if the whole world was watching, and we'll have plenty of commentary on, how Peter and I feel the performance overall was in terms of Joe Biden's victory, some undesirable results, as well as for what we think some of these institutions can improve on if they want to, win on better elections. And of course, we're not professionals or anything. We're just people who have opinions, who have been following this election very closely. As, Peter and I mostly follow all elections pretty closely. And it's fair to say that we've had, as every election, our fair number or our fair share of ups and downs from the beginning in the primary season to where we are right now. But I guess, the headline would be that Donald Trump is gone. Well, he's not gone yet, but he lost the election, which that was basically Peter's prediction. So in the end, it ended up, coming to fruition in that sense. Although you had said to me that you had gone back and listened to your prediction on this podcast about just to verify on what your thoughts were then. Mm-hmm. I guess that would be a natural starting place for our conversation. What made you listen to that again, and what observations did you take from it?
Well, one clear indicator as to why I wanted to go back and view my prediction is, one, see how accurately I had been able to view this thing at the time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You know, as they say, hindsight is 20/20. Go back and be able to see, okay, this is where, and also just for future reference to understand, like, this is where I was very accurate, and maybe to hold on to those predictions, you know, in the future, and where I was inaccurate, in which I'd have to do more thinking on certain aspects. And I had told you, after having listened to my predictions, is that technically, I did predict that Joe Biden would win, and he won, but my overall predictions were infinitely more optimistic that would ended up happening, for one. But two, the issues that both me and you talked about, in which we felt things could go bad, in which the Republican Party was gaining or doing better, in areas in which the Democratic Party was losing and doing much worse than they should have, that was 100% accurate. Well, actually, it wasn't 100% accurate. Again, it was too optimistic. It was actually much worse, those issues, than what I had assumed it would have been. Again, it still ends up to a win. Trump is not president.
A win's a win.
I gotta tell you, when I knew for a couple of days that Joe Biden had won. The fucking networks were pussyfooting around, not wanting to call it. But, you know, a few days later, they eventually called it. And again, the math was there for days. So for days, I knew, okay, Trump lost. But when they called it, just to hear it be official, again, I didn't realize, and I really should have, just how much I just felt good. Just how good that felt to hear, not so much that Joe Biden's going to be president. I can take or leave that, preferably leave. But more so that Donald Trump will no longer be president, that he had lost. That felt very, very good. Much better than I initially thought. Yeah. I just wanted fascist tears, and I got it, you know? So in my book, it was a win. There were we can talk about them later, but there were several things, especially with that win, that oh, beautiful. You couldn't write the shit down. But yeah, overall, just a lukewarm performance to begin with, and it really just reinstills or reconfirms a lot of my beliefs about specifically the Democratic Party in how much better they absolutely have to be. Like I've been screaming for months, a spine. All that is required of you is a spine, and you are failing at even that. So I'm gonna kick it to you.
Well, there's really a lot to say and a lot of different, areas to touch on, right? When it comes to everybody's thoughts on how this went in terms of the performance, but then also there's the expectations game. And a lot of people seem to not be aware of what to expect. You and I had a good understanding, but I'm not even sure that that meant that we were absolved from experiencing any kind of stress or anxiety on election night itself. of any variety, right? But I mean, we're gonna get into, and this should be no surprise, a certain line of thinking at some point in the podcast where we are going to be very critical of the Democratic Party. And I feel like it's stupid of me to even clarify this, but that is, constructive criticism, because I want the Democratic Party to succeed. I want them to stomp out the Republicans, and they just don't seem to be able to have it in them to do that. Based on not just rhetoric, but then also looking at election results, right? So just, be forewarned. But I think the proper place to start is, you're right. Having Donald Trump no longer be the president and him having him lose like this just feels so good. It feels so good, not just, he has created so much animosity really in every part of the country, but in terms of his personality, it just feels good to have a legitimate piece of shit like him go down in flames like that. And he deserved to. Mm-hmm. He 100% deserved to be fired like that. And this is the equivalent of firing a president. I mean, you're denied a second term. Mm-hmm. And there's so many observations. I think the first and foremost is you and I are going to be pretty direct in that at least half of the reason why he lost, or maybe the entire reason why he lost, was his complete incompetence in dealing with the coronavirus pandemic. Yes. Which to me, knowing that Biden would be the president instead, that was the most important issue right now, I think, for many people, right? Because the pandemic is getting worse and worse. We're at a point now where over 100,000 people a day are getting infected with coronavirus. The death count is nearing 240,000 lives lost so far this year. It's not hyperbole to say that it is getting seriously worse and worse and worse by the day. And that's all Donald Trump's fault, because even in the last weeks of the campaign, they couldn't be bothered with it. They were complaining about COVID being covered on news media, literally as people were dying. He went on a farewell tour with his rallies that resulted in many deaths and infections across the country. I don't know if you could do a worse job than Donald Trump when it came to handling a pandemic. And that's why I feel ultimately is why he lost his job.
Yeah. Again, I'm going to just come out and say it. The only reason he lost was because of COVID. I don't think Biden would have won had it not been for COVID.
It doesn't seem that way, does it? Mm-hmm. It doesn't seem that way because it just wasn't convincing enough, at least the victory, especially how it looked like on election night. Remember, our closest friends were in... I mean, I think you and I were like, hold on, let's wait a little bit here. I think Biden ultimately is going to pull it out of here, but our closest group of friends, when it came to Kyle or Alexis, they were kind of in despair. Kyle literally was drinking himself to death on election night because he was convinced it was all over. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, look, there was a certain part of election night where Donald Trump was literally winning everything and everywhere. And it felt, at least for a good 30 minutes, like it had been a replay of 2016, in large part because the votes that Donald Trump was getting across the country was overperforming the poll numbers again, which, by the way, man, were they really atrocious in a lot of these states. I mean, That's why I didn't really believe any poll that came out of Florida. All the polls that came out of Florida, all of them, 9 out of 10 of them had Biden up by 4 or 5.
I think coming out, Biden was up, not coming out of election day, going into election day, Biden had a plus 2.5, I believe, average. Mm-hmm. Going into election day. But a lot of them had plus 3, plus 4. You had some high ones. And he ended up losing by a larger margin than Hillary Clinton. This is the thing for Democrats. And yes, it is the system. The system does suck. Hillary Clinton won more than 3 million votes than Donald Trump in 2016, and still she wasn't able to be president. Biden is going to win by an even wider margin, and unfortunately, it still became a squeaker at the end.
The current count is 4.5 million votes.
Yep. Ridiculous. Ridiculous that the person that gets 4.5 million votes more than the other one, and we're here wondering who's going to be the president. Unbelievably undemocratic. The Electoral College is trash and it needs to go. So we do need to put into perspective, not only is a lot of this our undemocratic system, such as the Electoral College, but it is also, immense voter suppression enacted by Republicans, because they know the more the people vote, the less that they get elected. And again, this is kind of off topic. We'll get to it later. We will get to it, but there's this argument now about, how to change things within the Democratic Party. And of course, you always hear that, the country is not far left. I'm told all kinds of things of where the center is in this country, this and that, most people in this country are conservative. If that were fucking true, then the Republicans would have no issue getting rid of the Electoral College because they could win with a majority vote. Oh, wait, that's right. They can't, because they haven't in the last 7 out of 8 elections. And
only one Republican in 2004, that was George W. Bush's reelection, since 1988, has won the popular vote. That means that we had candidates like Al Gore and Hillary Clinton that received the most votes, but were denied the White House because of the Electoral College system.
And then beyond that, the voter suppression tactics have just become astronomical over the decades, enacted by Republicans, because they spend every waking moment trying to make sure that less people vote. If they wouldn't be so scared of more people voting if they believed more people believed in their ideas, and they know they don't. So this whole idea of most of the country is conservative, suck my dick. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Okay.
By the way, on the day that we're recording this, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham said that we need to do something about this mail-in ballot stuff. Otherwise, we'll never elect another Republican president again.
Ergo, the more people vote, the more Republicans lose. Ergo, less people believe in their ideas.
How many lawsuits were launched? I mean, not after the election, the ridiculous ones by Trump, but how many of the lawsuits did Republicans launch on several different state Supreme Courts to throw out a number of ballots? Remember there was one in Texas that were trying to get rid of 100,000 ballots because they drove in their ballot.
Literally, the entire process was exactly the same. The only difference was the voters were in the car as they did it because of COVID. And because of that, they tried to throw out over 100,000 ballots. Fucking ridiculous. Yeah, no, these people are evil. You can't. And not only that, they don't believe in democracy. They don't believe in democracy. They don't want more people to vote.
And one more evidence, the president has yet to concede, and many of his close conspirators and his cabinet and many Republican senators in control of power right now have refused to acknowledge Joe Biden as the president-elect. So it's happening every single day.
Mm-hmm. But I think, I was going to have a point. But anyway, I guess my thing is
about saying that the country is conservative.
Yeah, the country is not conservative. It is not where the Republican Party is, because if it was, it should literally be impossible for Democrats to win. Democrats literally have every roadblock humanly imaginable for their victory, but they're still able to eke out victories because they are more popular. The ideas are more popular. But I guess going back to the polling, the polling really, really fucked us. Like in some states, Trump was actually the difference in polling versus reality was Trump +7, Trump +6, Trump plus, and all of it, Trump plus. And this is the thing I always say, as Democrats, you have to infinitely overperform in order to just get a chance at maybe winning. Like the votes never break our way. It's never like, oh, actually we're doing better than we thought we would have. Nope. That doesn't happen. Not to us. So yeah, when Florida started coming in, and they started talking about Miami-Dade, and I just went, okay.
When they revealed the numbers of Miami-Dade, again, for those not aware, Miami-Dade is a central Democratic stronghold. If you're a Democrat, if you want to win Florida, you have to win that overwhelmingly and convincingly, right? That is your base of the state of Florida, Miami-Dade County. Hillary Clinton carried that with 65% of the vote and still lost Florida. And when the numbers came in about how Joe Biden was performing, Peter and I were not on the call. We hadn't talked to each other that whole night, but we probably had the same thought. Like when you see those numbers, like, oh, we lost Florida because Joe Biden only won Miami-Dade by I want to say between 8 and 10 percentage points compared to how Hillary did, which was at 65%. And in many ways, and we know why it was, because statewide in Florida, Donald Trump increased his vote share among what, social scientists classify as Latinos or Hispanics, when in reality we're talking about Floridian Hispanics, we're talking about Cubans, Venezuelans, and Nicaraguans, not Mexicans, as some of our closest friends and family assume when you see Latino on a board on TV, they think Mexican. That's not what
Although, to be fair, he did do it with Mexicans.
In a different state.
Along the Midwest. Not the Midwest.
Right.
The South.
Are you talking about Texas?
Yeah.
Yeah, the South.
Whatever.
Southwest, I guess you could say.
Yeah. So, yeah, when I started seeing, because Florida came in and I'm like, fuck, with Florida gone and just the numbers not moving in directions you would need to see them in to think to see a blue wave, I was like, fuck, like this might not be happening. Just this definitive victory that I so hoped for, because I wanted a definitive victory to not only tell the world, but maybe to tell myself, like, Trump was a fluke. And, Trump supporters, they're loud, they're crude, but, like, we can do better, basically, as a country. I didn't get that. No. There's a large portion of this country that is just, I don't even know if I have the words. I really don't.
To speak to Donald Trump's performance, right? So if you just go by the polls, you would assume that this would have been an early night. Everyone in our circle of friends, they were getting their hopes up, realistically, for an overwhelming landslide. That would have included wins in states like Florida, Ohio, North Carolina, Iowa, maybe even Texas. People were legitimately putting those.
Better voter shares at Texas, right? And again, when Texas started coming in, and I noticed they're talking about Trump's doing better among the Latinos here, and here, and it's like, fuck.
Yeah, I think it was Steve Kornacki on MSNBC, who's an amazing talent, be able to break this shit down just about everywhere we go geographically in the country. But when he literally pointed attention to the counties, the communities that are next to the border in Southwest Texas, and he drew again the vote share of what Biden was getting it compared to Hillary Clinton, you could just tell. And again, in most, if not all of these cases, it wasn't as if Trump was outright winning Latinos. It's that Joe Biden was heavily underperforming. And I believe maybe in one county, I think he was even down 5, where Clinton was up 40 in Texas in particular.
It was a small county, but it's indicative of a larger issue. And again, going back to just touch on the issues we discussed before, like a week before the election, we pointed out the issues in Florida that the people on the ground in Florida had complained to the Biden campaign, hey, do not think, like, we have serious fucking issues here. We need to do something. And they just largely ignored it. And then, again, we talked about how, I'm going to be real, the Democratic Party has not done nearly enough and has oftentimes even shunned the Mexican community in their party. Even though when you break down the Latino group and you isolate Mexicans, 74% of the time Mexicans vote Democrat. 74. The largest in all of the Latino demographic.
And as you were saying, in case the point hasn't been made clear, right? Mm-hmm. We have been, at least, we have been talking about this in concern to this particular concern, as it were, right? Of Latino voters, in particular, Mexicans, right? I believe ever since Joe Biden clinched the nomination, maybe even as early like as May or June, we were very unnerved by how Joe Biden's apparatus was not making any concentrated effort to talk to these voters. So throughout the election cycle, if you're someone like us, and if you consume a lot of political media, you are going to inevitably reach an interview or a demonstration of how it is that the Trump campaign was out early talking to these voters and Joe Biden was not. And from that moment, you can really predictably see in what direction that was going to go, especially considering that the Biden campaign did so terribly with that particular group of voters in the Democratic primary. Mm-hmm. And at no point, and again, like we you and I, we can be accused of being, bitter and salty or whatever. But, this demographic, or this community that you and I belong to, mm-hmm. basically, by heritage and by nationality, or our ancestral nationality, as it were, we're so rarely mentioned on media conversations. The media talks a lot about how, black voters and black women are the heart of the Democratic Party. That's nice and all, but can't we at least get a shout out or a mention? Like, we've delivered for Democrats on countless elections.
So much of the Democratic message my entire life has been, look at Republicans. Aren't they scary? You should vote for us. And I'm telling you, yes, I recognize that, but people need something to vote for. Like, I'm trying to think of, like, Mexicans. What Latino outreach did they really do? They love the Cubans. They'll go and try to get the Cubans because of Florida. And it's been that way for a long time because Florida's always been this, huge sought after swing state. But specifically, the Mexicans, I don't know what outreach there was. You can yell about kids in cages all you want, but you need to give these voters something. You need to make them want to vote for you, not just be scared of the other guy. That's not how you win elections. You would think they'd learned this from 2016.
Like, for example, in the debate, there was a good moment where Joe Biden looked the closest he ever did to a progressive when he's saying that we need a national, $15 minimum wage. Meanwhile, Donald Trump was arguing, you know what? It's not low enough. I want to make it lower. And then what's comical about that is, like, Donald Trump wins Florida, but in Florida on the ballot initiatives, the $15 minimum wage ends up winning and passing by the same voters by 20 points.
It's just
Something tells me a $15 minimum wage would be very popular. Hell, a $20 minimum wage would be very popular with Latino voters.
It's funny, right? Like we've been screaming out about this for a long time. I'm not even asking, because there became this whole discussion about the far left, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the far left cost us elections. And as someone who they would consider far left, they would consider me to be in that category. We already knew what was going to happen. Okay, there was two options. Either there was a massive blue wave, in which case everyone in the media and the Democratic Party establishment would have turned around and said, see, we need to be moderate. We have a mandate to be moderate. There you go. Or, as what happened here, they faltered. There was no blue wave, in which they turn around and say, see, the voters were scared to vote for us, so we need to be moderate. We cannot go too far left. Being too far left cost us the election. There is not a scenario possible in which the media and the Democratic establishment would turn around and say, you know what, we need to go farther left. That scenario does not exist. Whatever happened with this election, they would have come out saying, we need to be moderate, not go far left. And I'm not asking for them to go far left. Not at all. I am asking that they attach themselves to issues that the vast majority of this country loves. They attach themselves to it and then talk about it endlessly. Endlessly. Shut the fuck up with your platitudes. I don't give a fuck who raised you, or oh, I was poor and then I became, a fucking politician and I'm just like you. Shut the fuck up. I don't care. No one cares. Find good, solid legislation that pulls well with wherever you're running, and run on it. Again, like you said on Florida, $15 minimum wage. There should have been ads like crazy touting the fact that Biden supported raising the minimum rate. Like, that should have been all you heard in Florida. It should have been like 15 Biden, that some fucking nickname about how he's all for the raising the minimum wage. Weed. Oh my God. I don't know if I yelled at someone about this when it happened, but for back when they had the convention and the Democrats put out their official platform, they did not have the legalization of marijuana in their platform. They didn't have it. And it's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? This is probably the single most bipartisan issue that you can find, that the Democrats are 100% for, that you could be for, and they were too chicken shit to run on it. Did you ever hear Biden run on legalize marijuana? Not one.
He ran against it, I think, in the primary.
How many initiatives to legalize marijuana passed? What was it, 3?
6.
6. Okay, sorry, just double what I assumed it was.
Yeah, 6.
And fucking Oregon just passed. What are they? Shrooms? They're going for it.
I feel, didn't they decriminalize all drugs?
I wasn't it? I don't know. I don't even know.
Well, shrooms for sure was trending.
But it's like what I'm asking of Democrats isn't some crazy ass. I'm not asking you to fucking seize the means of production and overthrow the upper class and in this violent socialist revolution. I am asking that if you're running in a swing district, look at left-wing proposals that are unbelievably popular, like healthcare, like a minimum wage, like drug legalization, like so many other
paid family leave, healthcare.
There are so many things that you could run on and just hammer the fuck out of the issues in these swing districts. And you, I 100% understand that there are a lot of issues that in these swing districts out in middle America that might be, you know, a rah-rah rallying cry out here in the communist utopia known as California, that just don't fly over there. I understand that. Like me and you coming from a rural like Mexican community, there are things that I know that are just not winners for Democrats, for this kind of crowd. For one, abortion, right? Like that's it's not a winner, and I don't think it's ever going to be a winner with this.
Local politicians' careers were ended because they sat on the board of Planned Parenthood in this community.
Yeah, like it's
toxic.
It's toxic. And I understand.
And by the way, this community voted for Joe Biden 70% to 29% on election day.
Yes.
So, just.
Mm-hmm. But we're also Mexican, right? That's on par. About 70% of Mexicans vote for Joe Biden. But in other places that are maybe majority male and white,
yeah,
that shit ain't gonna fly, right? So, and I'm not saying be anti-abortion. All I'm saying is don't make it a central part of your platform if it doesn't roll with your constituents, right? Find the left-leaning policies that pull well with your constituents and then run on those. And then like make it your job to be like, I will do this for you. Believe me, I will make your life better. And honestly, that's all it takes.
But at the same time, though, you're kind of asking the impossible in the sense that these particular version of Democrats, the Democratic Party as an institution, fundamentally is incapable of communicating a damn thing, even if they tried. Remember what happened with Obamacare? They couldn't properly communicate what that stood for. Then there was the whole website issue, which even made for more of a lampooning on them. They cannot communicate worth a damn. And because of that, they let their Republican opponents set the table. They let them run the narrative. And so they're always playing defense, if they're doing defense, because in many of these cases, the campaigns weren't even responding to the attacks of socialism or Marxism or whatever have you. So they don't establish the narrative. They're not proactive. They're on the defense. If they're even defending the attacks at all, they basically just sit there and take it, which isn't that the perfect way to describe a 2020 Democratic establishment person, whether it be like that's the Senate that happened. They just let themselves be walked all over by the Republicans, with Amy Coney Barrett being confirmed to the Supreme Court, and everything they ever do, they just sit there and take it.
They came out and said, we aren't gonna let this happen. We'll burn the place to the ground if they try to confirm. And then they just did it, and then they're like, well, there's nothing we could have done, so vote. Remember to vote.
Let's hug Lindsey Graham and thank him for a wonderful procedure.
Oh, God. Motherfucker. Oh, my. And this is what I mean when I say Democrats have no spine, because this is... You say Democrats in 2020, but it's been this way my entire life. My entire life.
Literally, yeah.
Or at least as long as I've paid attention. No, you know what? Fuck it. My entire life. This is the way Democrats have been. They allow conservatives to set the narrative, and then the Democrats just run away and say, "No, they're liars. We're not that."
That's what Biden did a lot of the times in the debate.
He was never able to put. There was a couple of times where he did push back, and I was like, "Oh, that was good." Like,
but we were surprised that he punched at all because we don't expect them to come.
He did win, so I'll give him credit here. Right. I remember. I thought if you were to ask me before the debates, I would have told you there's a 10 out of 10 chance that Biden goes on stage and says, I denounce Antifa. I thought for sure that would have happened. But no, he was like, hey, no. Your own FBI director stated that Antifa was an idea. Not a... He actually pushed back, and I was like, wow, you saw how easy that was, Joe Biden? Holy shit. Imagine if you did that with other things like the Green New Deal or fracking or just anything at all. By the way, I've from what I've been reading, Trump's probably ready to fire that FBI director if he hasn't already.
Well, remember his good friend Steve Bannon called for his decapitation. That's not a joke. Look it up. This past week.
No, but I think in an effort to try and coup the election back, they're getting rid of all their because they have nothing left to hide.
To lose.
Yeah, to lose either. They're getting rid of anyone they can, and they're going to try and... I don't know. Democracy might fall apart by next podcast, so... At least, well, no, not everywhere. At least just in the United States. What little left of it that was there. So... I'm sorry. I always go off in tangents, and I never remember where I was. I have a Play-Doh brain. It's too mushy. What was I talking about? I was
Democratic attacks and Joe Biden.
Yes,
in the
they are spineless. Okay. And that's the thing. They always set the narrative. Because I remember, what was the attack with Bernie Sanders? He's not electable because they'll call him socialist. And then now they're arguing Joe Biden didn't do as well as he should have because they attacked him for being socialist. And again, instead of getting... My entire life, every Democrat ever has been called socialist. Kamala was called a communist. Joe Biden... not Bernie Sanders. Barack Obama was called a socialist, communist, Muslim, antichrist, who they used to have giant effigies of with him hanged, and they would burn like it. But again, I guess we all forgot about that. Everyone, John Kerry. They picked John Kerry as the moderate because they needed moderates to win. And what did they do? They dragged John Kerry's name through the mud, and he lost like a little bitch. I understand that there are some things in the left, the far left, as they all like to say, that probably don't fly with the rest of the country, or presumably could be toxic politically. I am willing to give you that. Like the whole police thing. I understand that that's a tough needle to thread with the police, because there are many police, and many people have family with the police. And when you talk about doing anything to the police, immediately people think of society without police, which scares them. They think of just chaos. And so yes, I understand that is a tough one. That is a tough needle to thread. But not everything. Like the Green New Deal, that's a winner. It's a winner. It just it just objectively is. I mean, it's it creates.
I think I just saw a tweet today that said that every candidate that ran on the Green New Deal won their election.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Of course, they'll make the argument, but their districts weren't as tough as the other people's districts, and it's like, or they'll say like, there's no correlation. You can't just say they won because they ran on the Green New Deal. Which, yeah, sure, you can't make that argument, but you also can't make the argument that running on the Green New Deal hurts them, because you are the people making the accusation that a Green New Deal hurts candidates. That clearly isn't shown within the data. So, but if you look at the polling, the Green New Deal is a winner. You can sell it well. It is about job creation. It is about preserving our planet, preserving our future. Everything about it is a winner. It creates so many new jobs. Like, you can sell this if you want to. Same thing with Medicare for All. Again, they have that attack about, you're gonna lose your healthcare or your private healthcare. Again, this is an easy dig, I think, to push back against. But the Democrats aren't gonna do it because the Democrat establishment used that own argument against the progressives themselves. I guess my point is, in order to actually win, Democrats, one, need to have a spine, which is the biggest ask, I think, easily. 2, run on shit that the people whose votes they're trying to get actually care about. Don't tell them to be afraid of this or that. Tell them how you're going to make their lives better. And 3, organize. And I was talking about this. I don't like Pete Buttigieg. I don't like Beto. I don't like, what's her fucking name from Georgia?
Stacey Abrams.
I don't like Stacey Abrams. I don't like any of these young, moderate Democrats. But you know what? They are a million times better than the old guard that is currently in charge. Because they, at the very least, know how to speak to the people. And 2, they understand the power of organizing. All 3 of these people understand that you need to meet the voters where they are at. You need to go to them and get them to vote. Which, again, the Biden team just didn't even really think about doing any organizing. Thank God for all the other people, including the squad and so many organizations around the country.
They weren't knocking on doors.
They weren't. They stopped doing it. Fucking ridiculous that they did it, but they just stopped doing it. Again, Nancy Pelosi, Schumer. Oh, Schumer's the best of the old guard. I'll give him that. He's at least talking the talk. Let's see if he walks the walk. What's her name from California? The one
Dianne Feinstein.
Yeah, the one that Frenched fucking Lindsey Graham. Yeah, these people are just, they're useless. I'm serious when I say they are useless. And for all this talk about how the far left cost them elections because they were so scared of the far left, you know who's a much bigger boogeyman than Bernie Sanders?
Nancy Pelosi. Pelosi.
It's
That's
Nancy Pelosi.
The studies have already come out, or at least the analysis has already come out in terms of like the autopsy, is that it turns out that a lot of the Democrats in swing districts, the Congress people that went down this past election, they went down because in the TV attack ads, unlike what they want to have you believe, in that AOC and her Green New Deal or whatever was tied to them, the reverse was actually true. It was Nancy Pelosi who was tied to those Democrats that ended up losing seats. And if, that isn't enough evidence for you, why does it happen to be that across the board, when it comes to Democrats who did not have clear policy proposals and that were basically running on character and against Donald Trump, why did all of them, many of them happen to be, self-identified conservative Democrats on the corporate wing of the party, why did most, if not all of them, lose? And how is it that every single Justice Democrat, progressive Democrat that ran on these specific policy proposals win their election or win re-election in many of these cases, like AOC herself? That matters, I feel. If you're trying to push this stupid narrative, look at the damn facts. And the damn facts destroy your bullshit narrative. And it's very clear to see that this is the establishment's latest attempt to keep the progressive base down where it is, instead of asserting the power.
But you know what the argument to that is that, progressives can only win in deep blue districts. In which case, again, I don't believe that's true, because progressive ideas win in.
We just said it earlier on the show. Florida. Right, yeah. Florida.
That's what I'm saying. You don't have to be the furthest left thing in the world, but these progressive issues are winners. At least run on these issues. And, to all the people saying it's like, progressives can only win in deep blue. Hey, buddy, you should be scared of that then. If you're what's it called? A moderate Democrat, because guess what? They're going to keep running progressives at your moderate champions in these deep blue districts. And at the end of the day, the only ones that are going to be standing left are the progressives. because they've taken over these deep blue district strongholds, and then they will be the standard bearers of the Democratic Party. So I don't think you'll like that analysis too much, but that's the plan.
And one, I know we kind of alluded to this when we were talking about Joe Biden's immense underperformance with Latino voters, but I had here a tweet here by Bree Newsom Bass talking about Joe Biden's strength with black voters in some of these swing states that so happened to swing the election toward Joe Biden being elected. Interestingly enough, of course, that this was retweeted by Jason Johnson, who is a known loathsome individual in the progressive community in terms of the things that he says, right, to just, push them down. But this was a particular response. She doesn't say Bernie's name. She just puts like a bunch of stars in the tweet. But because a lot of people that night were tweeting Bernie would have done better or a landslide.
Oh,
whatever,
yeah.
Right? This is what she said here. Biden won Michigan and Wisconsin because of record black turnout. Folks trying to argue that ... Bernie would have done better when these are the very voters he struggled to connect with, and when blue-collar whites went for Trump, shows folks aren't engaging in reality and continually ignore black voters.
Okay, I have two answers to this, right? The first is black voters are the most loyal Democratic voters out there, right? Latinos, not as much. You can lose them, right? So I think...
Which is what happened in this election.
Yes.
You lost them by a couple points.
If you want a candidate that's trying to bring in the most possible people, I honestly believe, maybe I'm wrong here, right? Because this is complete guesswork. Black voters would have come out in big numbers no matter who was on the ticket. I kind of believe that. But as we see here, not so much for Latino voters. Now, maybe the Cubans wouldn't have been for him for Bernie, although I don't know, because during the primary, Bernie actually got more Cuban vote in Florida than Biden did.
Is that true?
I think
I
it
had
is.
stopped paying attention by that point when the Florida primary took place.
I had read it somewhere. I'm pretty sure it's true.
Wow.
So, and I know that probably it's kind of, I don't know, people might take it the wrong way, but if you're gonna try and court voters, I think it'd be better to go with a candidate that's stronger with Latinos than stronger with black people, because black people are already intensely loyal to the party, and I feel they would have come out in big numbers anyway just to unseat Trump, whereas clearly with Latino voters that wasn't the case. But two, my next answer to that is yes. Black voters in this country from the very beginning delivered the win for Joe Biden.
Yeah.
So now, when I think it's important that black voters very much be centered at, as far as a Biden administration, you really need to turn out for them in Washington. A Biden administration really does have to. And I think it's pretty fucked up that the second they got the win, a lot of these Democrats all of a sudden are going like, Black Lives Matters could have cost us the election, or what's it called?
Defund the police.
Defund the police could have cost us these elections. We shouldn't have any of this shit. No. We need, the first thing they start talking about is we need to start reaching across the aisle. We need to break bread with conservatives. We need a compromise. And it's like, fuck, dude. You can't sit here and tell me that black people came out for you in the way that they did. And they really came out for you. They did. And then the second that you clinch that win, you turn around and say like, your guys' movements kind of fucked up our win, and we're gonna try and start to reach across the aisle with Republicans now. Like, I kind of feel like that's a slap in the face for like a lot of
the same Republicans who, by the way, have yet to acknowledge that Joe Biden actually won the election.
They won't
really,
even admit it's
these
over.
Republicans.
They won't even admit it's over, and you're trying to break bread with them. And again, this was the same mistake Barack Obama made. I remember in 2008, it's not the red states or the blue states, it's the United States of America. Fuck that. Like, when they go low, we go high. Fuck that. Okay? You cannot break bread with these people. You just can't. 8 years of an Obama presidency should have showed you that. These last 4 years of a Trump presidency sure as hell should have showed you that. And if nothing else, these past few days in which they refuse to concede the election and might even attempt a coup should show you that you cannot work with these people. I think it's crazy to me that a lot of Democrats think reaching Republican voters means reaching out to Republican politicians. No. You destroy Republican politicians, make the lives of every citizen in this country better through your left-leaning governance, and then you point that out to Republican voters and see how much better your life is because of us. Your precious Republican Party didn't have your back, but we did. Please vote for us. That's what they need to do. Stop with this fucking breaking bread bullshit, okay? This isn't Thanksgiving. Well, maybe it is. The only difference is the Democratic Party very much is the Native Americans in that scenario.
A couple other things to point out here. We're talking about, in terms of the Senate, we were all expecting this blue wave that didn't come, but that would have inevitably and very easily have captured the Senate for Democrats. That didn't happen and is likely not to happen because things very, as Peter said, break against the Democrats in just about every single thing except for a couple of issues, right? But it should be noted that all of the, all of the candidates, the senatorial candidates of the Democrats that were given such praise and media attention and millions of dollars, like Amy McGrath, or the challenger to Lindsey Graham, in the challenger to Susan Collins, they all went down in flames by double digits. What a waste of fucking money. And all of these people were handpicked by Chuck Schumer, who is the leader of the Democrats in the Senate, and the DCCC, and all of the establishment hacks that think that they have a no or a say, or basically are just picking candidates to lose because they were. And then look which one, even though it wasn't an outright victory, but there's still a chance that did prevail. John Ossoff, remember him? That almost won a congressional district in Georgia, which that's a pretty seismic political story. And at the end of the day, Georgia now becoming what it looks like to be a full-fledged swing state. But with Georgia basically now having 2 runoff elections in January to decide the fate of the Senate. And John Ossoff is in that game. And all those other conservative candidates that were so glowed and praised, they lost by double digits.
Oh my, they fucking lost to Collins. Fucking Collins. Susan Collins. But also too, I went back and I looked at the polling. Susan Collins never led once.
Never led once.
In
right.
a poll. Like, I think, I don't know who the one who lost was, but in the polls, she was like up like +6 or something. And in the end, Collins won by like +8. I don't know who is doing these polls, but they are trash. Like, polling going forward, something needs to change.
In North Carolina, the Democratic challenger Cal Cunningham was in almost every poll +5, +6, +7. He ended up it hasn't been called yet, but he will end up losing the race by a good 1 or 2 percentage points to Tom Tillis, which is the incumbent Republican senator. And that state in and of itself, they missed entirely because every poll I saw had Biden leading in that state. And when the votes are counted, because that hasn't been called yet, but Trump will win North Carolina.
How? How is the polling this bad?
Is it the polling or is it the Democrats' ineffectiveness in getting their base out to vote?
Well, it could
because we saw so many examples of the base coming out to vote. We saw record-breaking turnout just about everywhere.
Yeah, but then you also saw record-breaking turnout on the Republican side.
That's true.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm wrong, but I listening to the news, I think it was CNN. If the same number of people, Democrats came out, or people that voted for Biden in Texas, if those same number of voters came out in 2016, Hillary Clinton would have won Texas. The difference being a lot more people voted for Biden this time, but then also a lot more people voted for Trump than in 2016.
That's just mathematically correct. If you look at the current popular vote count, Donald Trump did get many more votes this time than he did in 2016. And if you just look at Donald Trump's overall performance, he very much matched, if not slightly improved, with white voters up and down the entire electorate.
It's actually really funny. Again, I might be wrong, but I was looking at the numbers, and I think he improved across every single demographic except white men.
He improved with white women. He improved with black men, Hispanic men.
What? And again, I have two feelings, right? Simultaneously, it terrifies me. Again, I had hoped that Trump was this fluke, that after 4 years, people would go like, holy shit, this man's a monster, and then we would be done with it. But clearly not. Clearly not. So on the one side, you have this fascism is actually staying for a while. I don't think it's disappearing. There's just this crazy rot we have in this country that Trump has accelerated. And on the other side, I have this other feeling where Democrats are just so goddamn ineffective. They need to be better. They need to do better. You were attacking the Senate. Holy shit, look at Nancy Pelosi's performance in the House. They were expected to gain seats. They lost like 10.
10.
At what point do you start criticizing our leadership and saying whatever you are doing is not working? You know what? I want to talk about something really positive about that day.
Let's do it.
Probably the best thing about, well, not that day. The announcement, the week, the announcement that Trump had lost was probably the most amazing thing to me. And it's just, you couldn't have planned it better. Trump was out golfing, as he usually does, when the announcement was made that he had lost the election. And the pictures that came out of him in his limo riding back to the White House where a massive amount of people had shown up celebrating his loss. And you see the pictures of his face pressed up against the window. And then you see the pictures of the people off the side of the road, just a bunch of people flipping him off, yelling, probably saying, go fuck yourself. And he, like, his face just sullen, just staring at it. And then they have those pictures of him walking into the White House, just like almost in tears. That's the way he looked in the pictures. Like, I didn't know how cathartic it would be, but holy shit, did that feel good. It felt good. I'm not gonna lie.
It still feels good.
Oh, those tears. Oh, I'm convinced his tears could bring a man back to life. Oh, God. I loved it. And then, yeah, obviously people across the United States were very much in a celebratory mood at the And again, I think it's pretty clear it was mostly fuck Trump. It was a fuck Trump celebration.
Oh my God. Yeah. No, it was. I mean, then we should have expected it, obviously, but like as you say, like immediately as it was called that Biden won the election, everybody in all the major cities across the country, if you were on social media or on TV, you would be it. It was a national celebration. It was unlike anything I think I've ever experienced. It was more than just like what you would think a typical election night celebration would be. It felt like a worldwide event.
And of course,
like joy.
Everyone compared it to the end of Return of the Jedi, which I am so disappointed that I have not seen a cut of all the footage with that music played over it. Like I'm really disappointed in the internet that hasn't happened yet. It clearly should have, but it.
You had people dancing in the streets, singing in the streets. You have Spike Lee in Brooklyn popping champagne.
Yeah, not to say that this is a little thing, but you know, at the end of the day, from the discussion we've had so far, me and you clearly were not very happy with a lot of the outcomes, and not only that, the state of the party, the country, the world. But you got to take the little moments for what they're worth, and that was it was more than a little moment. It was a big moment. It was great. It was it was a rejection of fascism. It wasn't a strong one, but it was still a rejection of it, and it stopped it in its tracks. Which, again, if Trump had won a second term, I don't think we would have had elections in 4 years, or at least free elections. I just don't think that would have happened.
Yeah.
Things would have gotten very, very bad. The CIA probably would have showed up to our doorstep just from half the shit we've said on these podcasts. So, yeah, that I just, looking back, I don't know why. Maybe because I was just so worried about a million other things. Just to hear, like, okay, he's lost. He is no longer going to be the president. I didn't realize just how cathartic that would be. And just how, like, lighter I would feel.
It's like a weight being lifted off your shoulders.
Yeah.
You know, like the Trump presidency is very unique for a lot of Americans in the sense that they were just not accustomed to have to, you know, have the president be in the news every single day, and also being alarmed on a daily basis by what Donald Trump does. All the stuff with the pandemic that we said at the top of the show is really just like the tip of the iceberg if you've been living here the last 4 years. Like looking forward to a presidency that isn't, you know, it doesn't have to require to us spending a good amount of our days just, you know, filled with dread and anxiety that the person that is our free leader is dismantling our institutions and destroying our lives every which way about it. And to have that be summarily rejected and defeated, regardless of the margin of victory. I mean, it'll be a pretty decent margin by the end of the day. I think it'll be 306 electoral votes to 2, whatever it was. Of course, we want it bigger, but I'll take it. If it means Trump getting out of the White House, I'll fucking take it. And honestly, that's what matters most right now in the moment, right? And it'll just go to show you, like, all of the stuff that was being said that day, yeah, but on the day of that it was called, you know, Joe Biden's people leaked to the media all the executive orders they planned to sign on day one. Iran reached out to Biden to reestablish the Iran deal after President Trump assassinated their top military leader and almost provoked a war with them.
Honestly, that was, to me, that's like the stuff of miracles, right? Like I truly believe the Iran deal that Barack Obama, because that was Barack Obama's Iran deal, that was truly, I think maybe his single greatest accomplishment in office. It was a fantastic deal. And the fact that they're signaling that they're willing to work with Joe Biden to re-enter that deal, that's great. Like, that's because I didn't think that they would want to go
after what Trump did.
Yeah, real piece of shit, that Trump. But that's
but it
great.
also shows you a nice contrast between the two administrations. Of course, in that leaked memo, re-entering the Paris Climate Accord,
very important,
reinstating DACA. Like, these are simple things to do. These are things that have already been established, but it just reminds you that that most of Trump's presidency has been to undo the previous administration. So they're basically just reinstating things how they should be. They're overturning over 100 environmental protection regulations that Trump overturned, and they're putting them back in place as they should be. Remember, one of the first things that Trump did as president was sign an executive order that allowed companies to dump their waste into the river.
These are such winning arguments for Democrats. I never heard of this from any of them.
Nope.
I never heard it. Oh my God.
Chuck Schumer, seemingly trying to stave off a primary challenge.
Oh, well, yeah.
His people were floating around that he was going to personally appeal to President-elect Biden to sign by executive order canceling up to $50,000 worth of debt off every student's loan debt.
Chuck? It's working. You're appealing to me. And again,
especially if you get this done, if this happens, that's a big fucking deal for a lot of people.
And again, like, we talked about this with what's his name, the co-author of the Green New Deal,
Ed Markey,
right? Like, Ed Markey, if you look at his history in office, is similar to Joe Biden's, right? Or maybe even slightly more conservative in some areas. But you know who he is right now? He's the progressive who's trying to get shit done, okay?
Yeah.
So it's like my hatred of the Democratic establishment isn't without merit, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not just, I hate these people, just hate them. No. If I could turn around and love these people tomorrow, I would do it. If Chuck Schumer could prove to me that he can be better, oh my God, I would love it. Same with Joe Biden. Joe Biden is actually has been talking a lot about climate change, and he seems to be really wanting to make that a big part of his administration.
And
I think that's fantastic.
You saw today what Chuck Schumer tweeted. He said, voters in 4 more states just voted to legalize adult recreational use of marijuana. It's past time to end the federal prohibition of marijuana and work to undo the harms done by the war on drugs, particularly in Black and brown communities.
Yes. Where was this months ago? You should have been shouting this from the rooftops. Oh, but I forgot. We had to get the Pennsylvanian suburbs, or whatever the fuck. And
By the way, currently Joe Biden is leading in Pennsylvania. It's been called he won by 45,000 votes, so not as close as we thought it would be.
But again, overall, Trump did better with white women. Yeah. And again, I kept being told that white women were going to deliver this thing for us.
White suburban women were going to
deliver this. Trump did better with white women overall. I don't know suburban specifically, but he did better with white women. Again, he did better with just about every single demographic.
Yeah.
You know who are the people that delivered this win to you, Joe Biden? Black people. So you go out there and you fight for them. Latinos. Less of them than I wish there would have been, but they did deliver.
Unless you count the Latinos, obviously in California, which was guaranteed, but particularly
Arizona,
Arizona and Nevada.
Yes, which, I mean, they're so close to California. You know, that's probably why. As the California Latinos spread out,
young people, indigenous people, and people of color, record turnout in Arizona.
I think
in Arizona, and in a Democrat, this is the first time a Democrat wins Arizona since World War II. Well, a Democrat. This is the first time since World War II that Arizona has elected a Democratic president, and also has 2 Democratic senators. Because that was one of the victories on the election of the Democrats, is that they defeated Martha McSally, the Republican incumbent.
Democrats, you cannot lose ground on Latinos. You can't. They are your godsend, okay? They pop out 50 kids a minute. They're spreading all over this country. You need them. They will help you flip states. And if you go back to actually giving a shit about black people and talking to them and actively trying to help them and fix their communities, there's a lot of black people in the South. Look at Georgia. Georgia flipped. Georgia. Virginia. That's blue. It wasn't so blue. It didn't used to be blue, right?
No, not 10 years ago. No.
Yeah, like there's a lot of black people in the South. Don't tell me North Carolina's out of reach. Like, do the work. We can flip these states, and we need to, because guess what? Ohio ain't coming to save your ass. Iowa isn't coming to save your ass. And even though this state is closer than those other 2, I genuinely think it's red. Florida isn't coming to save your ass.
Yeah. I've also been trying to, like, really, throughout, almost in the beginning of this election cycle, I've been trying to really cast doubt on Florida from the very beginning. I mean, we lost in 2018.
I put too much hope in the numbers. But my entire life, I've never understood how Florida is a swing state. Because, again, we've been talking about this for so long. It is full of old white retirees, Cubans, and crazy people. So it's like, I don't know how it's been a swing state even this long. I think it's been a miracle that it's remained a swing state this long. But Texas,
that's the key.
Keep working
Focus
at
more
Texas.
on Texas.
It will flip. I believe it. Because we didn't do that great this time around in Texas. But what did it end up being? 6 points?
I think 5 or 6 points. Better than Hillary Clinton, not as good as Beto O'Rourke.
Okay. But if you look strictly presidential,
right? That's an improvement.
But if you're looking at, like, oh fuck, I think they went as far back as, like, when who did Obama run at? John McCain. Like, John McCain won by like 38 points, and then it was what's
Romney.
his name? Romney with like 20 some points, and then Trump was 9 points, and then this time 6 points. Like, it's clearly moving in one direction.
And the surprise is how quickly that is. I remember back in 2008, they were saying maybe Texas can flip in 2050. I don't think we have to wait that long for Texas to flip.
I definitely don't think we have to wait that long. And again, 6 points, but it would have been like, I honestly think it would have been like 3 points if they hadn't had lost ground with Latinos.
Yeah.
But again, if they go in there and they put in that work, next go around, will it flip? Probably not. But I think you'll see more of a nail biter like North Carolina or Georgia than what you saw this last go around.
Yeah.
I think there was hope that it would be something like that, but it wasn't a good night in that respect.
It wasn't. Yeah, I mean, there was a slight chance it could have happened, but then, I mean, again, hindsight's 2020, as they say, in the year of this being 2020. But a lot of those polls were grossly overestimating the support of Joe Biden in a lot of these key crucial states. But then there's also the other drama, right? That a lot of people were just like, they went to bed thinking that Donald Trump had been reelected, at least with Tuesday night. But you and I had known for a while that it would take days and days for the 3 big ones, which was Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, that were going to decide this election to fully count their votes. And they sure as hell count the votes. They they sure as hell took their days. And again, this should be mentioned, the reason why they weren't allowed, they had been sitting on these mail ballots for weeks and weeks. They weren't allowed, some states like Florida do count them as they have them. But these 3 states weren't allowed to do that because their Republican-controlled legislatures forbid them to do it. And they were mandated to start counting their mail-in ballots until the day after the election.
And then I think it's so funny. Conservatives angry, like, they just came up with ballots in the middle of the night out of thin air. What happened? And it's like, again, maybe it's to me because I pay attention to politics, but I also don't listen to crazy fuckers like they do. I listen to normal news. I knew I knew the process. I knew this is what would be happening. I knew this was the law.
Yeah.
That, again, the Democrats were more likely to vote mail-in than Republicans, so most of the mail-in would be Democrat, and most of same-day voting would be Republican. I knew the laws that said that they couldn't count until start counting either that night or even the next day, and that a lot of the exact states that we saw flip were the states that had those laws. Somehow these people go to every rally, gave their soul to this man, but didn't understand the basics of these laws. So
of course they didn't. Of course they didn't. I mean, they risked their lives, and some of them probably died or killed somebody else because of going to that rally. Let's just be real.
The pizza man, what was his name?
Who was the pizza man? Alex Jones?
No.
What pizza man?
The one Trump killed with his rally. Herman Cain.
Herman Cain. Yeah.
That's pretty sad because he died and no one gave a shit. And I mean conservatives. Because it hurt their narrative to have Herman Cain die.
They were mad at him for dying.
Yeah.
Basically what happened. Yeah, it's just and for those wondering why are there so many different rules for like all these different states? Shouldn't there be like federal law like about with voting? Yeah, that's a good point, but never missing an opportunity to really attack this theory called states' rights. There you go.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I don't think people realize the states are the ones that really dictate how the voting goes. Like they are the ones that create their own laws for voting. That's why in some states all votes need to be in like 8 or 7 p.m.
The same way they dictate what curriculum is in their public education.
Unfortunately. I mean, conservatives, if you want to all of a sudden flip and say fuck states' rights, hey, I'm with you. Let's do it. Yeah.
States' rights is also why the Electoral College exists.
Yeah, that's why. And you know what? I hadn't thought about this before, but I heard someone say this, and it's really right. States' rights really is just affirmative action for these rural people. These people, they always say like, oh, they hate affirmative action, they hate this, they hate that. But all of a sudden, when you're like, well, we need to get rid of the Electoral College, they go like, well then everything will be decided by California and New York. No, we can't have that. We need to make it even. All of a sudden, they care about being even. Like, God, these people just have no, what's the word? Convictions. I think it would be interesting to talk about what do you think will happen until the inauguration day? Because I think a lot of crazy shit's going to happen.
Yeah. I haven't the slightest idea. All I can tell you is that I never expected, and I still didn't expect the president to attend the inauguration or to welcome Biden to the White House.
Hell no. Can I tell you what I think is going to happen?
Tell me.
Okay. Especially with this whole Barr thing, it's very clear they're going all in on fraud. And by the way, when you ask them what fraud, they have no... Their whole thing is like, well, that's why we need to investigate to see if there's fraud. Well, then it's like, well, you're the one accusing them of fraud and saying that's why we need to investigate. But you're saying you have no evidence of fraud. So you want us to investigate in order to find you fraud? Like, ridiculous. But they're going all in. And it probably won't be the most legal. It won't be the most legal thing in the sense of the word, especially with Barr now looking into this himself. Trump is going to go on the offensive. And by the offensive, I mean he's going to do what he does best. And he's going to go out there and he's going to hold rallies. He's going to hold these massive MAGA rallies. And he's going to say, this election was cheated from us. I was winning on November 3rd. We wake up in the morning. They magically appear. You know, maybe they'll bring poll watchers onto the stadium to talk about how they didn't let my poll watch. And by the way, there's no such thing as, like, you're not a poll watch. You can't just show up where they're counting ballots, call yourself a poll watcher, and try to get in. You're not a poll watcher. You're a protester. And no, they're not going to let hundreds of people inside the room where they're counting ballots, you dumb motherfuckers. But that's the narrative they're going to take. And he's going to have a rally after rally after rally after rally. As for whether this will actually change the results of the election, I highly doubt it. But it will go a long way to sow doubt into the American people's eyes and beliefs. And I also think there is another chance that yes, he eventually leaves the White House, but he doesn't stop campaigning. He goes for the next 4 years. He has rally after rally after rally in order to. He basically campaigns for 4 years for 2024 to try to come back and win. And the whole time say I was cheated, and every step of the Biden presidency rile up his base with these massive rallies. And that's what I think is going to happen.
That seems likely.
Plausible, at the very least.
Yeah, it seems likely. One would hope that he would die, since he is old, between then and there. But why would we hope for such things, right?
Even if he did die, everyone would be like, oh, it was a deep state op came in and, you know, fucking killed him. They shot him with the heart attack ray. Top secret. They'd fit the Jews in there somewhere. It would be a whole thing. Although it would probably lessen the complicated words. I don't know. Uncomplicate. That's a word. That's probably the right one as well. Yeah. But it's gonna be a shit show until the inauguration.
As long as it ends with him leaving the White House, I think we'll be fine. I mean, we've put up with it for 4 years, right?
Oh my god! Did you see that article that was like, "Oh, Trump has would agree to concede under these conditions," and it's like, bitch, what do you mean under certain conditions?
Conditions.
Like, no one needs his concession. He lost. It's over. Like he's not in charge on whether he stays or not.
Lawrence O'Donnell said the best on MSNBC when he says the Constitution does not require the loser to concede.
No, again, it's just another formality.
It's pageantry.
That's all it is. God, it scares me. I never realized how much of our system is really just pageantry, not laws. Just we agree to go along with certain traditions because it keeps the train moving. And then the Trump presidency has really shown what happens when someone says, "No, I don't give a fuck." But I mean, Trump no more. Again, and it I guess what feels good is with Trump, I know there is no possible, with him as president, whatever happens in the world and whatever we try to accomplish, I know there is no chance of it ever being better under his reign. It's just...
Yeah.
But under a Biden presidency, again, not a big Biden fan. There's... Like, I don't look at things and go like, oh God. Not only is it never happening, it's going to get a million times worse. I look at it and go like, oh, okay, we have a shot at maybe doing something here, you know? Maybe not do everything we want, but we can make improvements. And that's something I obviously haven't felt for 4 years. Most of my adult life. Really. Basically all of my adult life. So, I don't know. You look tired.
Well, look, this I think we're running the circle. We're circling the drain here in terms of like what more we can say about this. But I think it was all brilliantly said, and I agree with you. And he's not gone yet, and so there's still enough room for to keep things interesting. But to also just do the work a little bit, because we've been saying all year long about what a potential Biden presidency would do with coronavirus, and how we've always said when we had in the context of movie theaters and or movies in general, that they really did need a Biden presidency in order for the doors that need to be opened for them to survive and then get some relief and aid. Because seemingly, the Trump administration didn't do that, which is surprising, right? Because, I mean, you'd think that they would, but because these are a bunch of companies in an industry, but they just don't seem to care. Couple that in with, of course, and again, we don't put much stock, at least Peter and I don't put much stock on preliminary results, but it's been going around the news all day today about this new early data of this new vaccine that apparently is at least 90% effective, which is I think the first meaningful serious update we've had on a vaccine in quite some time.
Thank God the Illuminati dropped that shit after the election. They held off. They made sure. So it wouldn't have an effect.
Imagine if that was dropped before the election.
Oof. But it's okay. Oh, Hollywood's got our back.
I wanted to say here real quick that the drug maker Pfizer announced on Monday that an early analysis of its coronavirus vaccine trial suggested the vaccine was robustly effective in preventing COVID-19, mind you. A promising development as the world has waited anxiously for any positive news about a pandemic that has killed more than 1.2 million people. The company said that the analysis found that the vaccine was more than 90% effective in preventing the disease among trial volunteers who had no evidence of prior coronavirus infection. If the results hold up, that level of protection would put it on par with highly effective childhood vaccines for diseases such as measles. No serious safety concerns have been observed, the company said. That's where we are right now with this latest news.
That's great. I'm again. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. The second that Biden got into office, we get all this hopeful news.
A lot of hopeful news, as a matter of fact.
The new world order is really kicking into gear. Thank God for them, right? Or they worship a flying pig. I don't know how it goes. Sorry, I just love reading the conspiracies of the right and how they think the left is run by the New World Order, Illuminati, Jewish cabal, intent on Satanists intent on eating children, because that was the thing, right? Hillary Clinton was a lesbian who drank the blood of children. She smelled like sulfur because she was a demon. These fucking people, man, it's a death cult. I don't know what to tell you. It's some crazy fucking shit. But This is the problem. Again, not to go back to earlier shit, but several QAnon individuals, which is a conspiracy death cult, with pedophilic connections, is entirely embraced by the Republican Party, all the way up to the president himself, and slightly to the left people like Ocasio-Cortez within the Democratic Party are chastised and kicked to the side and don't want to be associated with. It's an issue.
It is. And it's one that's only just getting started.
Oh, yeah.
The real fight's on the horizon.
Yeah. But it certainly looks more hopeful than it did just a week ago.
Yeah. What difference a week makes. I don't know what else we could say for this, but we hope that you participated in the election. We hope, if you're listening, that you are very happy with the results of the election, and very just hopeful now that for the first time, maybe in this entire ordeal of coronavirus, there is that light at the end of the tunnel. And all it took was a change in leadership.
And now on to our movie segment.
Which I don't know, what do we have? Do you want to discuss anything?
No, we could just have this as our one-off political stream.
Yeah.
I mean,
nothing really happened.
I saw Grace Randolph do this. I guess maybe slightly talk about how this would affect the movie industry. Yeah. The only way
Well, yeah, that's what I was alluding to, like how a Biden administration would now be willing to give relief and aid to this industry.
Well, you got to worry about that Senate, though. You know those conservatives ain't in love with Hollywood. So it's iffy, but I will tell you this. I 1000% believe Biden presidency leads to a much swifter end than coronavirus, than clearly a Donald Trump presidency ever would. And that is just deuces. That is perfect for the movie industry, because they need people, butts in seats at a movie theater to start making money again. And that won't happen until coronavirus is at least mostly over. And honestly, I don't think people are going to feel safe until vaccines start rolling out. And again, I genuinely believe a Joe Biden presidency will be 1,000,000 times better than, I think it's so obvious, than the way Trump handled this. And that is going to bode extremely well for the movie industry. I hope to see a movie in theaters next year. That is my hope. That is my goal.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's the hope.
I need to watch Dune.
Anything else to say before we close off today?
No, I think it's good. We covered a lot.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Peter, and thank you all for listening and indulging our political conversation here. All those previous things I had mentioned about being hopeful stand. And to remind you, of course, that our shows are available every single Sunday and sometimes on Thursdays. Guillermo del Toro month is coming up ahead. And, of course, Good Place and so many more wonderful pieces of content. Thank you all so much. Stay under here on our Red Spotlight. And until next time, bye-bye.